When I was a child, I thought mountains were motionless, that they had always stood there, unchanged, eternal, as if time itself was afraid of them. I would look at them from the valley below, and they seemed to be something more than stone. There was something alive in them, something that breathed, though very slowly. Only later did I understand that this wasn't an illusion. Mountains really are alive. They are born from pain, from collisions and fire. They come into existence when the earth cracks and its insides are pushed toward the sky. When continents like gigantic creatures crash into one another, unstoppable. The Himalayas, the Alps, the Andes, all of them are traces of ancient wars. Inscriptions in stone showing how the planet struggled to find balance again. These are not dead rocks. They are scars from long-forgotten battles. And yet when we look at them, it's hard to believe. We stand at their feet and hear only wind and silence. It feels like a world frozen in time. But beneath our feet, the earth is still moving. Millimeter by millimeter, the mountains rise, sometimes faster than human fingernails grow, sometimes slower than the planet breathes. When you stand on a summit, it feels as though you can see everything. Valleys, rivers, the world stretched out below like a map. But mountains are not meant to be looked at. They are meant to be listened to, because within their silence lies something deeper than stone and snow. It's the history of the earth. It's the memory of the world itself. And today, in this story, I'll try to take you there, to the depths of stone, to the heart of mountains, to the places where time stops flowing and the earth still speaks, only very, very quietly. Before mountains existed, the world was young, raw, and uncertain of itself. The surface of the earth resembled a molten sea of stone. Everything was in motion, continents drifting, oceans forming, and the planet's interior pulsing with fire. Beneath the thin crust we walk on today, the life of magma still throbbed, heavy and slow, like the heartbeat of the world. That is where every mountain story begins, deep below, in an invisible place where the earth breathes. Mountains are born from tension. Tectonic plates, massive fragments of the Earth's crust, collide and push against each other for millions of years. Imagine two continents, India and Asia, drifting across the ocean of stone for millennia until they finally crash with a force beyond human comprehension. The Earth wrinkles, ripples, and fractures. Layers of rock that once lay on the seabed are pushed upward to heights of 8,000 meters. Thus the Himalayas were born. And remarkably, they are still growing. India continues to press into Asia by a few centimeters every year. It seems insignificant, but on a planetary scale, it's the Earth's heartbeat. If we could fast forward time, we would see the mountains slowly lifting, as if the planet were taking a deep breath. Yet not all mountains are born from collision. Some rise from within the Earth itself, from its unrest and pain. These are volcanic mountains, the children of fire. When pressure inside the planet becomes too great, magma breaks through the crust, explodes, and hurls rock, ash, and lava into the air. It's a moment of chaos and destruction, but also of creation. A volcano that looks like a threat today will tomorrow become a mountain. Sometimes it takes only a few days for a new peak to appear, a new shape on the surface of the world. That's why mountains are not the past. They are still being created. Right now, at this very moment, somewhere beneath the ocean's surface, between the plates of the Pacific, a mountain is being born. Magma rises from the seafloor, solidifies in the cold water, and builds new layers. We may never see it. It may remain hidden beneath kilometers of sea. But that doesn't mean it isn't there. The Earth has never stopped creating. It simply does so at a pace we cannot perceive. But if mountains can be born, can they also die? They can, though not in the way we understand death. A mountain does not fall in an instant. It dies slowly, very slowly. Its enemy is not fire, but time. Wind, rain, snow, frost. These quiet forces carve the rock for thousands of years, eroding granite, grinding peaks into dust. This process, erosion, is both the gentlest and the most merciless of all. An entire mountain can crumble into powder, flow down rivers, and vanish from the landscape. And the dust carried by the wind may once have been a summit, Every grain of sand is the memory of a mountain long gone. But that's not the end. The stone that became sand is carried by water, settles on the seabed, and over millions of years turns into rock again. And that rock may once more be lifted skyward when the plates collide again. This is how the earth writes its stories, in cycles. There is no beginning and no end. There is only motion, endless and enduring. Sometimes a mountain cracks. Inside, tension builds up and seeks release. Earthquakes, landslides, collapsing slopes, these are the natural language of the planet. Sometimes entire sides of a mountain can break away, taking with them everything humans have built. But even that is not death, it's transformation. Because a mountain is not a structure, not a piece of architecture. It is a process. A living, slow movement we cannot see, but that never stops. Most mountains we know are only temporary shapes. In 1,000,000 years, they will look different, and in 2,000,000, they may not exist at all. They will crumble, become soil, and from that soil, others will rise. That's why when you look at a mountain, you see something both ancient and new, being born and dying at the same time. The earth doesn't know the word permanence. It knows only change. Mountains are its breath. They rise and fall, born from chaos and returning to it, in a rhythm that lasts longer than any human memory. When you stand at the foot of a mountain, you see only its surface. Stone, grass, snow, perhaps a trail winding upward. But what matters most lies deep beneath. The interior of a mountain is another world, one we rarely glimpse. It's a realm where time doesn't flow as it does on the surface. There, everything happens slowly, millimeter by millimeter, in darkness, in silence, in a temperature unchanged for ages. Inside, a mountain is like an archive of the planet. Each of its layers is a page from Earth's ancient history. The rocks that form its body were born in different eras, some in fire, some in water, others under pressure so immense that the human mind can hardly grasp them. Granite, basalt, limestone, quartz. Each stone is a record of events millions of years old. Within them are traces of oceans long gone and forests turned to dust. The earth never forgets. Everything that has ever happened remains written within it. But a mountain is not a dead block of stone. It isn't a monolith. It's a complex breathing organism. Inside it, there is motion. Rocks grind against each other, shift, crumble, and fuse. Sometimes deep underground, water flows, slowly, over thousands of years. Every drop finds its way, dissolving limestone, carving microscopic cracks. And that's how caves are born. It seems simple, just water and stone. But give them 1,000,000 years, and they create underground cathedrals. Tunnels that stretch for miles. Chambers so vast they could hold entire cities of silence. Water seeps into the rock and works within it like a sculptor. When it drips from the ceiling, it leaves a trace, a ring of mineral, a tiny halo of calcium. Drop by drop, over hundreds of thousands of years, a stalactite grows. From the floor, its opposite rises, a stalagmite. Sometimes they meet and merge into a single column, becoming a motionless witness of time. Each shape is a record of ages, a clock that measures not days, but epochs. In the deepest layers of a mountain lie minerals and crystals. They form under pressures and temperatures no laboratory can fully reproduce. Where magma cools very slowly, atoms arrange themselves one by one into perfect structures. Symmetrical, precise, beautiful. That's why crystals look as if they must have been designed. In truth, it's nature, working with a patience humans don't possess. Every crystal is a work of chance and time, a balance of order and chaos shaped over millions of years. Sometimes, when someone cuts open a rock, they find a geode inside, an empty space filled with glittering crystals of amethyst, quartz, or calcite. From the outside, it's just a dull gray lump. Inside, a cosmos in stone. And perhaps that's the paradox of mountains. The deeper you look, the more life and beauty you find. In their hearts, where no light reaches, things are born that can reflect every ray of it. The interior of a mountain is also its memory. In microscopic cracks, tiny bubbles of ancient air are trapped. In droplets of water, the ghosts of long-vanished oceans. Scientists can read from them the climates of vanished eras, the temperatures, the makeup of the atmosphere. It's as if the mountain itself were saying, "I remember what you were like, Earth." We often think of mountains as something cold and lifeless, but inside they live. In the darkness of their caves, scientists have found microorganisms that need neither light nor oxygen. They feed on minerals, on the very rock itself, drawing energy from chemistry alone. For them, the mountain is the world, proof that life finds a way even where humans see only stone. So when you look at a peak, remember that it's only the tip. The real mountain lies below. What you see is just the surface of something far greater, an immense system reaching kilometers down. A mountain isn't a shape in space, but the story of the world hidden beneath a single word. Inside it sleeps the fire that created it, the water that carved it, and the life that learned to exist there in silence. A river always begins in the mountains, not because the mountain wants it, but because it cannot hold back what lives within it. Water is the blood of the planet, and the mountain is one of its hearts. High above, where the air is thin and the temperature drops below zero, something seemingly lifeless is born. Snow. Layer by layer it covers the peaks for months, for years. Every flake that falls becomes part of something larger. Over time, that snow transforms into ice, heavy, hard, clear as glass. Under its own weight, it begins to move, slowly, millimeter by millimeter, downward. That's how a glacier is born, the mountain's slow, icy tongue. It doesn't merely slide over stone, it sculpts it. It carves valleys, tears apart rocks, gouges out passes. And though it moves with the patience of eternity, its strength is beyond anything humans can create. Deep within the glacier, beneath its frozen shell, the first drops of meltwater appear. From them a spring is born, small, almost invisible. Sometimes hidden in a crack, sometimes flowing from a cave, just a thin trickle. But that trickle is the beginning of a river. Hundreds of such streams descend from the mountains. They gather, join, grow stronger. From every melting snowfield, every glacier, every cloud that lingered over a peak and released its rain, water is born, always flowing downward. That is its law and its purpose. The mountain gives height, gravity gives direction, and that's why rivers exist. But a mountain doesn't just create water, it stores it. Inside it are thousands of microscopic cracks, pores, and fissures. When rain falls on the slopes, some of the water seeps deep into the rock. There it stays, for months, sometimes for centuries, until it finds an outlet lower down as a spring. In this way, a mountain acts as a natural reservoir. In summer, when rain is scarce, rivers still flow because the mountain releases what it held within. That's how a mountain nourishes the world. Every great river on earth has its source in the mountains. The Nile in the highlands of Ethiopia, the Indus and Ganges in the Himalayas, the Amazon in the Andes. It's no coincidence. It's physics and poetry intertwined. The higher the land rises, the more snow and rain it can gather. Clouds carrying moisture from the oceans hit the slopes, cool down, and release their water. That's why mountains are factories of rain. Without them, much of the earth would be desert. But the mountain doesn't give water for free. We pay for it with erosion. As a river flows downward, it carries away pieces of the mountain, dust, sand, stones. What was once a summit becomes, with time, the riverbed. Water wears down rock, carries it and lays it elsewhere. Valleys, plains, deltas, all are the children of mountains. Without mountains, there would be no rivers. But without rivers, mountains wouldn't slowly die. And without that, there would be no cycle of Earth's life. The water that flows from a mountain is its memory. It carries minerals, salts, and fine grains of rock. The story the mountain passes onward, all the way to the ocean. There everything ends and begins again. Because the water that has flowed away will one day return, as clouds, as rain, as snow. And once again, it will fall upon the mountains. Once again, it will flow. The mountain and the river are two ends of the same breath. One rises, the other carries. One endures in silence, the other speaks in the voice of water. But both are part of the same song, the song of the planet that never stops circling, changing, breathing. Mountains do not merely stand still. They decide where rain will fall, where the wind will blow, where the land will be green, and where it will burn beneath the sun. They are not passive giants. They are the architects of weather, the engineers of air. When wind carries moisture from the ocean, it pushes ahead clouds full of water. But when it meets mountains, everything changes. The air is forced upward, cools and condenses. Drops that were moments ago mist turn into rain, into snow, into hail. That's why on one side of a mountain there is abundance, and on the other, desert. This phenomenon is called a rain shadow. Mountains hold the rain on their windward side, and beyond them, the air descends dry and hot. A single ridgeline can separate life from barrenness. That's why the Andes are green on the eastern side, while the Atacama Desert on the west lies in endless drought. That's why the Himalayas stop the monsoon, and Tibet beyond them is like a dried-out sea. Mountains are the borders of climate. Where their shadow ends, another world begins. But their influence reaches further than rain alone. Mountains can shape the wind itself. When cold air flows down their slopes at night, it creates local currents that shape the weather of entire valleys. By day, as the sun heats the rock, air rises, and with it, storm clouds form. Every valley, every ridge, has its own rhythm of breathing, a morning inhale and an evening exhale. In the mountains, everything is amplified. The day is sharper, the night colder, the wind more unpredictable. The temperature can drop 10 degrees in minutes. That's why mountain air feels clean. It's thinner, lighter, constantly shifting. Every breath there is a kind of test, to see whether you still belong to this world, or if you've already stepped beyond it. Mountains can also hold weather still. On their high peaks, within cold masses of air, long-lived clouds are born. Clouds that can last for days, even weeks. Sometimes they look like hats or rings hovering above the summit. It's not an optical illusion, but the result of wind endlessly colliding with stone. There, in those invisible battles, form the air currents that shape the climate of entire continents. Some mountains have the power to cool the world. Their snow and glaciers reflect sunlight back into space, maintaining the planet's delicate energy balance. When they melt, Earth absorbs more heat and the climate warms. In this way, mountains become the barometers of epochs, their white and green surfaces revealing how the planet breathes. And yet, for all their might, mountains act in silence. They issue no commands. They simply exist. And by their very presence, they direct the movement of water, air, and warmth. Their form shapes clouds. Their height decides where storms will rise. Their shadow determines where people can live. In that sense, mountains don't just create landscapes. They create the world itself. If every mountain vanished from the planet, weather would lose its meaning. The wind would flow smoothly, rain would fall evenly, and there would be no storms, no snow. There would be no rainforests or deserts, only a flat, monotonous plain, without contrasts, without life. For it is contrast that gives birth to life, and mountains are its most visible form. Life in the mountains is an art of adaptation. For humans, they are harsh, cold, difficult. But for nature, they are a challenge that has, for millions of years, taught patience and ingenuity. The higher you go, the less oxygen, the less warmth, the less soil, and still, life climbs upward, silently, step by step, like moss spreading across stone. On the lower slopes, where the river still sings, the earth is fertile and the vegetation thick. Deciduous and coniferous forests intertwine, wrapping the mountain in a soft green collar. But with every meter higher, the world thins. Trees shrink, their crowns grow sparse, until they disappear entirely. Shrubs take their place, then grasses, then only moss, lichens, and stone. It's not chance. Every species has its limit, its threshold, the point where life says, "I'll go no further." And yet some do. Beyond the forest begins a world where only the boldest endure. At heights where the wind can tear clouds apart, grow plants with thick leaves that store water and tiny hairs that protect them from cold. They have no rivals here and no time for mistakes. They bloom for just a few days a year, then vanish again, waiting for the next moment of grace. Animals, too, have learned the mountain's language. Chamois, ibexes, llamas, moving across steep slopes with a lightness that defies gravity. Their muscles are different, their blood thicker, their hearts beating faster to grasp every breath of oxygen. Eagles, condors, and vultures glide above the cliffs, riding the air currents borne along the ridges. Their wings can hold them aloft for hours without a single beat, each movement a calculation of survival. Beneath stones, in shadows untouched by sun, live microorganisms that survive in temperatures where most life perishes. They are like the mountain's own ghosts, silent, invisible, immortal in their endurance. In icy streams, clear as glass, swim fish that can live in water so low in oxygen it would kill almost anything else. A mountain doesn't give much, but what it gives is enough. Plants learn to catch every drop of dew. Animals know that every step costs energy. Nothing is wasted. In the mountains, survival is an art of conserving strength and mastering patience. When winter comes, the world doesn't die, it rests. Everything slows, hides beneath the snow, waiting. Because in the mountains, winter isn't an ending. It's a pause in breath. For humans, mountains have always been a boundary. Hard to reach, dangerous, cold. But those who've learned to live with them, shepherds, Himalayan monks, the people of the Andes, Tibet, the Carpathians, understood their rhythm. They knew when it was safe to climb and when the mountain slept. To them, a mountain was not an obstacle but a home, a place where a person is small yet free. The higher you go, the less life there is, and perhaps that's why every form of life that does exist there feels stronger. Every leaf, every animal, every human carries something of the rock itself. Courage, endurance, calm. Because in the mountains, survival comes not from strength, but from humility. The higher you climb, the more you feel that the mountain is not a place for humans. The air grows thin. Every breath must be fought for. At 8,000 meters, there's only half the oxygen found at sea level. The heart beats faster, the blood thickens, the head throbs. The brain starves for oxygen, and the body begins to rebel. It's as if the earth were slowly cutting man off from its own breath. Each step grows heavier, as if stones were tied to your legs. Altitude changes everything. Taste, sleep, thought. Appetite fades. The body struggles to hold on to energy. Sometimes just a few hours too high, and the body begins to fall apart from within. The lungs fill with fluid, the brain swells, and every breath burns. It's called altitude sickness, the invisible adversary of all who try to climb where the air is too thin for life. At night, the temperature can drop below -40 degrees. Metal turns brittle as glass. Even the air inside oxygen masks can freeze. The word cold loses meaning. It's not the presence of chill, but the absence of warmth altogether. In such conditions, a person can freeze to death in minutes, and the snow will cover them as gently as dust in a museum. And there they will remain, forever. Everyone knows the name Everest, a symbol of the peak, the goal, the limit. But it is not the greatest. The tallest, yes, if you measure from sea level. But if you look deeper, where a mountain truly begins, on the ocean floor, the real giant is Mauna Kea. It's a volcano in Hawaii that rises more than 10 kilometers from the bottom of the Pacific. Taller than Everest by nearly 1.5 kilometers, though most of its body lies hidden beneath the sea. On the surface, it looks calm, covered in grass and ash. But its heart reaches into the ocean's darkness. A giant that has chosen silence. When we say, the highest mountain in the world, we really mean the highest that can be seen. Mountains rarely reveal their whole bodies. What we see is just the tip. The rest remains hidden, like glaciers, like people. Though they seem harsh and dark on the outside, inside mountains can gleam like the heart of the planet. In their depths, crystals are born, quartz, amethyst, fluorite, slow miracles of geology forming shapes so perfect they seem unreal. In Mexico's Neka Cave, deep underground, Scientists found selenite crystals larger than a human being. Some stretched 12 meters long and weigh tens of tons. They formed in warmth, in water saturated with minerals, over hundreds of thousands of years. All it took was for the water to stop flowing and the minerals to crystallize, slowly, perfectly, until they created a world made of light and stone. To enter such a cave is to descend into the heart of a jewel. The temperature reaches 60 degrees Celsius. The humidity kills in minutes. It's no place for humans. It's the mountain's beating heart, and perhaps that's why it fascinates us so deeply. Because every mountain, though it seems dead on the surface, pulses within with light unseen. Mountains come from many origins. Sometimes you only need to look closely. In the rock that forms a mountain, you can find the trace of a shell, a coral, a fossilized leaf, and suddenly everything changes, because you realize that what you stand upon was once the floor of an ancient ocean. The limestones and dolomites that now build the Alps, the Carpathians, the Tatras, were formed from marine life millions of years ago, lifted upward by the movements of Earth's crust, as if the planet wanted to remind the sky of what was once its sea. It's a paradox. The mountains that seem farthest from water hold its history within. Every summit, then, is not just stone. It's the memory of an ocean. Touch the rock, and you touch something that once lived, breathed, and drifted in waves. A mountain carries within it a past that no one remembers, except the mountain itself. On a map, borders seem fixed, lines dividing nations, peoples, languages. But in the mountains, those lines move. Because mountains themselves are never still. In the Himalayas, the Alps, the Andes, the earth is still shifting. Tectonic plates press against one another, and with each earthquake, borders may move by meters. Invisible to us, but vast to a geologist? Sometimes those movements have real consequences. After the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, some boundary points shifted by nearly 2 meters. Everest itself changed height, literally. It shows that our maps are only temporary notes in chaos. For the Earth, there are no countries, no lines. There is only motion. Mountains do not recognize borders. They do not care who was born on which side. To them, we are only passing guests. Tiny beings trying to name something that never belonged to anyone. They were here before us, and they will remain long after we are gone.